if a woman is murdered by a man,
Yes.
that rather than the man, that requires the man to get his life, the law is that another woman would, another woman's body would be vengeance for them.
No, no. Another woman who did not commit the crime?
Well, that's what it says to me.
No, no, no.
How do you understand?
I mean, you get an innocent woman and kill her?
Well, when I don't know. I asked about this several years ago, and that's what
Okay, now the next verse, remember, the next verse clarifies it. What we really see here is an excuse to save lives. So if a man kills a woman, the man should not be killed. If a woman kills a man, the woman should not be killed. It's an excuse to spare lives, because the next verse says that this law shall be a life-saving law for you. What this does, it sets the maximum in case of murder, one soul for one soul. What is happening now in many places is that one person is killed from a tribe, so the whole tribe goes to the tribe of the murderer and they kill 10 people instead of one. So this law here in the Quran puts a ceiling of one for one and goes further to spare lives in favor of compensation. Because compensation is the Islamic law throughout. For example, last year they caught a girl who was burning buildings at the university. She caused $200,000 worth of fires, 6 or 7 fires, an arsonist. You probably heard of that. Now, so they put the girl on trial, and now they have the law here or the Islamic law. Let's compare the two of them. The law here will say, put her in jail, in prison. So here's a young girl whose future is destroyed for some crazy thing she did, and you put her in prison. The Islamic law says, okay, you caused $200,000 damage to the University of Arizona, so you have to pay this to the University of Arizona. So you're gonna, whatever you do in your life, whatever you work, you're gonna garnish your salaries a percentage, 10%, 20% until this is paid. That's the Islamic law. It's compensation. The same is in anything that happens. Somebody hits your car. You can have them punished, or they can compensate you. Now, specifically, as far as this law is concerned, I want you to note a couple of things. First, it says, however, if the guilty is pardoned by the victim's kin. By the way, in Islam, the judge is always the victim, or the victim's kin. If the victim is dead, obviously, then his kin folk are the judge. And they decide whether they want the murderer to be killed or to be spared and pay compensation to the victim's children or family or whatever. But what we have here is an excuse to spare lives. If a free man kills a slave, you don't kill the free man. If the slave kills the free man, you don't kill the slave. In the same way. Right, and the Quran is in favor of sparing the life, in favor of compensation. And this is leniency from God. And we get the clue from the next verse that says this is a life-saving law. So we have here two things. First, the maximum. The maximum is set by one soul for one soul. That's the maximum, one for one. This is why equivalence comes in the picture. And then the others, the free for the free, the slave for the slave, the woman for the woman, is to provide an excuse for sparing lives. So if a slave kills his master, you don't kill the slave. If the master kills the slave, you don't kill the master. But if a slave kills a slave, then there is one for one. If a free person kills a free person, of course that was in the days when there was slavery. It was a fact of life until 100 years ago. So thank God it's over. But the Quran deals with all times, all periods. And the idea is to seek excuses to spare lives. You heard about the guy who was killed by, executed by lethal injection the other day. And the next day, the prosecutor who got the judgment against him said, "You killed the wrong man."
Yeah.
What? So what can you do now? I mean, yeah. And he's the prosecutor who got the judgment against that man. So what can you do now? So what you see here, God's law is to look for excuses to spare the life. Now, if a person is forced to pay compensation, and after 10 years he's proven innocent, it's okay. You know, he's still alive. But like in this fellow says, you killed the wrong man. So now, what can we do now? Pardon? Well, right. Whoever does wrong, nobody gets away with anything, by the way. So the killings that are going on even now in some tribal societies are quite unfair. And the Quran sought here to set a maximum. Is it clear now, Iman? I remember you were disturbed about this, and I thought you settled it.
Well, maybe I must have misunderstood your explanation of the time.
Yeah.
This makes much more sense. This is where I had thought originally.
I think we probably dealt with one example where a man kills a woman. Then I told you, no, you don't kill the man. That's unfair, isn't it? But it applies both ways. If the woman kills the man, you don't kill the woman. You ask for compensation. You have to go to compensation.
Can the aggressor ask the victim for compensation?
Pardon? Yeah.
Then the aggressor or the killer go and ask the victim's family and ask them for compensation.
No, it's the victim that asks for compensation.
Oh, victim.
Yeah. Rahim, Loreto. Right, well that's an Islamic law. Very good.
What is the name? Yeah?
I think she's on probation or something, and yeah, but I remember when she was going on trial and things, I said, well, poor girl, look at this, we're gonna put her, because they were asking for 7-year prison or something. And of course there are examples like this, lots of examples, where you can...
No, in many countries there exists capital punishment. What does Islamic view?
Okay, well this is a good point.
What was the point?
And in some Islamic countries they demand capital punishment. Okay, some bloodthirsty people will take this very verse, and say that the Quran institutes capital punishment, requires capital punishment. It's required. Hey, this is fun. They tell you that the Quran requires capital punishment, and that's a misunderstanding of the verse. Capital punishment here is set as a maximum 1 for 1, not only 1 for 1, one kind for the same kind, and favor is given to compensation.
Just on 179, we should emphasize again this, well, the rest of that. O you who possess intelligence, that you may attain salvation.
Right.
And that's our theme all the time with Rahman and Rahim, is that compassion and that mercy. And people being as vicegerents on earth, like that we are, we're supposed to be doing to each other or in the world the kind of things that we would like from God or from eternal life. So we should recognize further than, why, the deeper reason for this, which is our own salvation, not merely the life or death of the people involved in the crime.
Also, it does, intelligence here is a key word. Because like this fellow who was executed a few days ago, now who gained what from killing him? He made a mistake, obviously, and there was a victim. It was a terrible crime. But they were not sure who killed. There were two people involved. But probably would have been better if he was forced to pay compensation to somebody. And he'd be paying the rest of his life. And somebody would be benefiting from that. But as it is, nobody benefited from
Was
it.
this Tucson over in Texas?
Yeah.
He became a Muslim in prison.
Well, yeah, that's what he said. I hope he did.
We
Yeah, we don't know. Huh?
said a lot of
Yeah. So, it's a matter of intelligence as to what is really the best way to handle this. Who benefits from killing that person? Yeah.
Would this be a partial application of the law for the Jews or
No, it still holds as a maximum. See, remember that the judge, according to God's law, is the victim. The judge is always the victim. And the maximum punishment is already set. So if I hit your car, you'll be the judge. And your maximum that you can take from me is the cost that will restore your car to the original condition. And you can choose to say, no, it's okay. This person is poor and I'm not going to take anything from him. Or you can ask for any compensation within the maximum. So it is not an abrogation of the Jewish law, soul for the soul.
But if it's partially, then that is, my understanding of the Jewish law is that it's a man for a woman, but it's the soul for the soul, this is that.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Right. Right. That's a good point. What supports that is that in Surah 5 it says, for the Jews we decree the soul for the soul, the tooth for the tooth, and so forth.
This is the first time I ever heard this interpretation discussed. I mean, this understanding of it. It's, is this practiced by this verse? I've never heard of that word.
What's that again?
That people would say, well, because it was a man that killed a woman or a woman killed a man, therefore we can't kill him. I've never heard that.
That's what it says here?
Yeah, but I've never heard that
Oh,
decision.
you won't. You'll hear the kill part.
But it's nowhere ever used. It hasn't been. From this verse. That's what I'm asking.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't. But the general consensus, unfortunately, is that this demands capital punishment. Unfortunately, this is their understanding. But if they stick to the letter of Quran, it's very clear. So, are you through, Imam? Okay, Latif. Leave a will.
Decree for you is the dictation of a will when death approaches to one of you, for the benefit of your parents and relatives. This is incumbent duty upon the righteous. If anyone alters a will he has witnessed, he incurs the sins of such distortion. That is pure admission. However, if one senses obviously simple partiality on the part of the testator and alters the will to restore justice, and he incurs no sin. God is forgiven much.
It's never rigid. The Quran is never rigid.
For being polite. But before we go to this particular subject, I think we should, the question was raised about capital punishment. In some ways, there is some form of capital punishment, but of a different sort. In verse chapter 5, Surah 5, verse 33. Only those who actively fight God and His Messenger and commit gross corruption may be punished by execution or crucifixion, or by cutting their hands and feet on alternate sides, or by banishing them. Or by banishing them. Then it deserves humiliation in this life and far worse retribution in the hereafter. As for those who repent before you overcome them, but this refers to war. Our brother raised the question if people can be executed. Well, I just mentioned that.
When people who have committed vast corruption,
But I would just say there is such a thing as executing people. But this seems to refer more to war, not a case of X killing Y in society, but it refers to a person who has fought society and has brought corruption. I'm sorry, I just would like to mention it for the sake of it. No, okay.
well, even in the law of equivalence, there's execution. If the victims can rule that they want the killer killed, that's execution. But the maximum is set. However, we are directed towards leniency.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. Latifa, please.
It's okay.
Because it's a matter of subject.
Are there any other questions on the subject of capital punishment? Okay, back to Latif.
Okay, my understanding, as far as leaving the will before death, is just like what it said, as far as, I guess my understanding and from what I see in our culture, when one dies, it's not so much as the person who's dead, but more so what the person had and who it goes to. Because a lot of times, like for instance, when my stepmother died, my father, okay, he had pretty much a lot of property, Cadillac and trailer home and so forth and so forth. But he had raised these two sons of hers. And here I am with my father at the funeral, but the sons didn't attend the funeral, which was their mother. They was at the house cleaning out the china cabinets and the clothes and the one who was so supposed to be so cool, riding around town in the Cadillac, and, so I guess to me, that's my understanding of why Allah wants you to read the will. So
Was not fair to you, was it?
No, it wasn't fair to me, but then, too, I guess a lot was in me then, of course it was, but I wasn't aware, but then because I didn't, a lot of people was telling me, well, Latika, that's your father, you gonna get this and you gonna get that, but I didn't want no part. It was like I was more concerned about the dead person and where they sold or where they were born than the materialistic things. Where their real son supposed to be their mother wasn't even concerned about their mother. It was concerned about the materialistic things. So to me, that's saying that this is why you should read the will, so that way it won't, bring up a lot of hostility towards relatives and all this type of stuff because people really get malicious, they want things that belong to them, or what they think belongs to them, or just things that they really want and they know they couldn't get, because they don't have God or some of their own clever money. So that's what it is.
That's a very good example, and I think it must be typical because I know in my wife's family 2 deaths happened, and after these 2 deaths, people, it seems like every time they get together, they are talking who grabbed what and where the antique thing went and where this was, and who tried to pry the window open, and it's really incredible, and there are lots of hostility involved, just like you said. So if the deceased had distributed everything and says this goes to that and this goes to that, there'd be no hostilities before that.
But let me mention something very important in Sharia, where this is a divorce. It's true that there is a decree that one should leave a will, but let us not imagine that in Islam a man can just arbitrarily, favor one son as against the other his own. Because I can only remember from page 69, to a very great extent, in Islamic law, when a person dies, he is more or less, I say more or less, invested. You know what I mean? Invested. Because on page 69, 176, there are certain portions. A father, in other words, cannot disinherit a daughter, even if he does not love her. As long as she has not done anything wrong, he cannot say, none for my daughter Latifa, because Latifa will always have to get something. On 176. And we know also that if a man leaves, for example, 2 girls and 1 boy, well, this is just a case, because it's a very difficult thing. I tried to learn this years ago and I found it very difficult. The 2 girls, let's say he leaves $100, all right? And he makes no will. 1 girl will get 25, the other girl will get 25, and the boy will get 50. But he must take care of the 2 sisters. That is in another verse, is that right? Man is in charge of women. So people say this is not fair. It seems that a man is worth 2 women. But if they cut the Quran into pieces, there's another provision that says a man has to take care of his of the women's folk. Up to the men, that's what they do to get, Because the $50 he must use to support his 2 sisters and so on.
His own family too.
Yeah.
His wife.
There are other verses in the Quran, which I cannot see now, wherein a wife has a certain share. Now this is one of the most difficult subjects of Islamic law, because at the same time a man is allowed also to have to leave a will. What I'm trying to say, Amo, is that there is a limit to what you can will. You cannot dispossess in your will members of the family who have certain rights.
But the law of inheritance is stated very clearly in Quran.
Yeah.
And if you go to verse 11 of the same surah, you will see at the end of the verse that it says, you don't really know which of the children is closer to you and more beneficial to you. And as you know, people go through stages where they are mad at this son, and then next month they will be buddy with this son and mad at the other son, and so forth. People will change. And then some people end up angry at the older children, so they leave the $1 million to the cat, instead of the children. And they have the cat sitting somewhere, and some guardian making sure that the cat eats the best food and so forth. And the children are in a miserable shape. It happens quite often. So you have verse 11 in front of you of this
This is the one that took the phone, verse 11.
Yeah.
I'm just talking in general, my dear brothers and sisters, that what I'm saying is that in spite of the fact that Surah 2, verse 118, speaks of a will, a man cannot be very arbitrary in his will. On the contrary, look what says, something says later on, that however, if one senses obviously sinful partiality. So but in the United States, strictly speaking, you can disinherit unless the people bring the problem to court sometimes to contest it. That's clear. No?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't do anything.
can't really communicate to
However, there is something in Islamic history, and I don't think it's really based in Quran, but it is developed as a matter of historical transformation, that only in the case of a man who has killed his father can he be declared by the judge not to inherit anything. If he kills his father,
Well, he has to be killed anyway
Yeah.
if they or pay compensation
Yeah.
to the rest of the family.
or however, there was a very interesting case I think in Cairo, when a son had tried to kill his father. He tried to kill his father, but he has failed on various occasions. In any case, yeah, he was not very good at it. Yeah. Anyhow, the father
This
died.
inherited.
No, not this case, not this case. The father died. So, the brothers and the sisters of this brother told the judge that, our brother does not deserve anything from our dead father because he has, on this occasion, not only spoken about trying to kill his father, but wishing his father died, and there is proof that he tried. But since the action was not carried to its logical conclusion, the judge said, no, that son has a legitimate share. No, I don't remember what percentage he got.
But the will that we're talking about here, since the Quran puts down specifically how the inheritance
Yes.
laws should be, this will applies to the things in the house, like Latifa was saying, and the things that we all witness about the families disputing over certain properties in the house, or car, or TV, and things like that. Not the real estate, the big things that have to be divided according to the Quranic law. Also, there are people who, for example, secretly taking care of some poor families or something, and nobody knows. Therefore, these people will have to mention in the will that a certain proportion of my income or the estate income must go to this family or that school or that mosque or that church or whatever. So these things have to be written down because nobody knows what is so now if this person dies, then the poor family that is benefiting from this person may have their income cut. Yeah.
Now, regarding these shares, about the sons and daughters, what's your opinion? I know what the opinion of many of these Madhanas and so on. How about adopted son? Does he have a Muslim adopted son?
Yeah.
Does he have
Exactly the same. like
exactly
Quran
the
says.
same as a biological son?
Yep. That's what the Quran says. Yeah. It says they are members of our family.
No, because some people have tried to
The Quran states that the adopted children are members of your family. Even though you have to keep the original name, but if you don't, then you can give them your name. If there is no way you can find out what the original name is, and they are members of the family.
How about if your children are not Muslim?
Doesn't matter.
Do they have-
You can't judge that. Yeah, every person is a potential.
No, but I mean, in actual practice,
Yeah.
let's say you're a Muslim, your children grew up as Muslims, but at the age of 20, 21, they decided to become Jews or Christians,
Doesn't matter.
registered in such churches and so on.
Mormon church, doesn't matter.
Will this still cover them?
Yes. Because every human being is treated as a potential believer. In fact, they may become Jewish, and through the Jewish religion they discovered one God, worship one God.
Or maybe if they inherit, they might decide to become Muslims.
Maybe, yeah, you never know.
Because the law is wonderful, no? Yes, no, but I'm just mentioning this because these things
Yeah, because the Quran does not say.
debated very much in Al-Azhar. Join forming another church, they
But disinherited.
not only are they disinherited, but also in certain laws, a man cannot inherit from a Muslim in general, does not inherit from his Christian wife because they say that her money belongs to her ummah. And it's very cruel because sometimes I know certain cases of women who don't inherit from Muslim relatives.
these are all
And I
not-
found this very,
They're not Quranic laws.
very, very sad and very cruel.
They're all non-Quranic laws.
They're not Quranic law.
Right. So the Quranic laws don't say if the wife is this or that, or
Yeah.
if the husband is this or that, or if the son or the daughter is this or that. So, doesn't.
It happens in our Quran.
The Quran says, do not change the names of the adopted children. To keep the lineage. Okay, closing questions and remarks. Anybody has any questions or remarks or anything?
No, but I'm very glad to hear this view of the views.
The Quran is very clear.
Very, very clear. It's unfortunate that this,
Yeah, well, we should. Now, Dean Mahul raised an interesting point. A person in the Philippines or Indonesia, if his children become Jewish or Christian, they are disinherited. Now, my question is this father a Muslim? See? See? Because he's probably following hadith and sunnah and idols, and never pray and things like that. See? So he's judging other people when he is really not better than any of them.
yeah. But actually, the point is that,
Well, they may be better as Christians or Jews.
what I'm trying to say is that the society or the community is so well organized in some parts of Southeast Asia that we know as a matter of fact that adopted children do not get inheritance. This to me has been very cruel, and I raised this question of you. I said, what is the Quranic basis? The Quran does not say, you believing son, or it doesn't say.
Exactly.
So, more than once I thought that this has become a kind of an extra religious element has entered. It's more of a social,
Fanaticism.
a kind of a social concept to keep the money between themselves. Out of hatred, if not jealousy or misunderstanding of another group. Yet in some ways, what has amazed me is this, that if the wife is a Christian, the Muslim relatives will not accept her money. They will allow her Christian relatives to inherit from her. Well, there's a little balance also. But I can see there is no
Right.
Quranic basis.
The Quran treats everybody as a potential believer.
I'm talking of the Shafi Mazhab. I don't know about the other. It's terrible how these things have come up.
Yep. Okay, if there's no other questions, yeah. Yes.
Yes, according to this.
Or if you have adopted and genetic children, they have to be treated exactly the same.
Dr. Mahmoud, is it true that in Islam, if you say that I believe in, I'm a Muslim, when I said I'm a Muslim, I believe in the certain things, Christianity or Judaism and Christian religion. And treat most people as a believer. If you treat them as a believer, what they're trying to do in Southeast Asia is they not trust or not treat as a believer, means that they are not respected to their religion anyway.
Yes.
They are disregarding.
But this is what, but this is not my idea. I'm only saying what they're doing.
Yeah.
And this is not, on the contrary, I think it's very cruel. Because I was telling Ustad, that they're thinking not in terms of Quran. They're thinking in terms of social power groups, rivalry as rivals of another community. This is a sociological phenomenon. I tell you this is because sometimes I've been consulted in the South. I know of a case of a very rich Muslim. This is a true story. A very rich Muslim who adopted a Christian boy. And the boy grew up as a Muslim. This Muslim was so rich but a little bit ignorant. And this boy built an empire, an economic empire. You know, these orchards of coconut trees and so on and so on. He told me, I am afraid, he says, that if I die, my son will not only not inherit anything, but inheritance will drive him out of the land. Now this is a terrible thing. When I think this problem, it's not for, philosophical or, for either reason. It actually happens. And so, I took some Indonesian learners from Sumatra to find out if we can use this particular verse that we read now. If this man can write down in his will to set aside. Now we're anticipating that the alim of that area will question him. Therefore, we raise the question whether a man can set aside as a gift. And we threaten the relatives. We say that if they're going to make trouble, the way I look at it, this man will now issue a document before the Philippine government giving all of his properties as a gift while he's alive. Therefore, this intestate condition will not anymore be applied, because there is nothing to prevent a Muslim now from giving his whole library or his house as a gift. So we are thinking of the possibility of him giving a gift while he's alive to this boy who built this economic empire. But the family, they like the boy. But now that there is going to be money, they're beginning to hate it. This has nothing to do with Islam. This is pure jealousy and la ilaha illa al-nukur. There's no God except money for these people and so on. So I don't know what has happened. But it is very, very interesting. But the view of Ustaz is very good. If this boy is a member of the family, which he is, although some of the ulama in the Philippines are saying, in Islam now, there is no more adoption. Huh? They brought the problem. Huh? I don't know where they got it.
The Prophet himself had an adopted son.
Yeah, but then you say, after that, there is no more. It's different. Precisely. Because when the Prophet was able to marry the wife of the adopted son, they say, their own interpretation, that he cannot be treated anymore. A son-in-law is not the same as a son. So they're using this.
Yeah.
And all of this has to do with money.
Oh,
But as you say, it only means lack of respect for other believers. This is not Islam anymore. This is just human beings, worried about money. But it's happening.
Inshallah, the morning prayer will be at 6 o'clock. And bring your notebooks, those of you. Don't forget to bring lots of papers and notebooks. Okay, let's read Al-Fatiha. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين